Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar Weekly Discussion topic video. This one's going to be for Jeong Jeong. Someone suggested that I do this in the comments of one of my videos, though I think the main suggestion was that I do a bunch of minor characters in one video, but I don't have a massive amount of time today, so I'm just going to cover Jeong Jeong because the suggestion probably promoted the most discussion topics in my head for him, so as a kind of shorter video on a character, I'm going to go for Jeong Jeong this week, and then probably cover another minor character next time out. But yeah, Jeong Jeong is a really interesting character. We don't know a massive amount about him. Of course, he is a minor character. We only get to really meet him a couple of times, and we know a little bit about his kind of backstory and stuff like that. So, you know, the key thing with him, obviously, is how they make him different to Iroh when, you know, I'd say they're roughly around similar ages. I say Iroh's a little bit older than Jeong Jeong. You know, they used to be in the Fire Nation military, but then they kind of left. They've both got that going for them. And then I suppose the key thing between them that makes them different is their philosophy on firebending, which I'll get into kind of later on, because I suppose that's the key aspect of Jeong Jeong as a character. But first, let's get into how powerful he is, since I seem to do that as a thing. To me, he strikes me as definitely one of the most powerful firebenders we've seen. He doesn't really have a special technique, it doesn't appear like he has lightning bending, because I don't think his personality really is to the point where it would make sense for him to have the technique, because he doesn't seem to have the most clear mind when it comes to firebending and what it actually is and stuff like that. He seems to have his own issues with his past and how that relates to Zhao and stuff like that. So to me, I don't really see him as having the technique, otherwise wouldn't he have used it at some point? The thing they seem to go for to make Jeong Jeong unique as a firebender is that he tends to, at least the way I see it, is he's like this defensive firebender. He a lot of the time when we see him firebend, it's kind of putting up these giant walls of fire to kind of control a certain zone or keep people away and stuff like that. He seems his whole thing is about him is he very much keeps his firebending under control. So, you know, forming a distinct wall is a kind of key thing for him, and not going overboard with his powers. So that's why you can never probably say he's the most powerful firebender, or up there with some of the other benders that we've seen. But, you know, if he maybe got over that block that he seems to have with regards to how he sees firebending, he could be, I suppose, similar to Iroh's level. But either way, you know, he's very effective in the take back of Ba Sing Se with the rest of the Order of the White Lotus, and just in general seems quite powerful. And as I said, I like the whole giant walls of fire that he tends to use. That's a unique thing to give him. And of course he doesn't seem to have the lightning bending techniques, or obviously anything else. So yeah, he's strong, and that's cool. But in terms of his personality, he definitely is a character who is very much, as we meet him, kind of defined a little bit by his past, and he obviously is part of the Order of White Lotus, and so isn't an active participant on the Fire Nation side of things. He's just very much like Pian Dao. He's just remains in the Fire Nation sort of thing, but doesn't actively participate for the Fire Nation or really against them until the Order of White Lotus kind of properly forms up and takes back Ba Sing Se. But you can see just in some of the stuff that he does, when Aang comes to ask him for help with learning firebending, and Jeong Jeong turns him away immediately, that there's not a sense of oh, the Avatars here that the Order of White Lotus heavily believes in the Avatar, I'll help you straight away. He's very much no, you're not ready to learn. And this obviously relates to the fact that Jeong Jeong was the one who trained Zhao is such an important thing about who he is and his perspective on firebending, the way he goes about teaching Aang, the flaws in that method, and I suppose the character issue that he seems to have, and that Zhao was clearly his pupil at some point, and he saw something in Zhao that led to him taking him on as a pupil, but Zhao went completely down the wrong philosophy of firebending, that being that he saw it as just this powerful thing that can destroy, and he went away from Jeong Jeong's whole thing about control and just uses it as this incredibly destructive ability that is completely against the way Jeong Jeong sees things. And I think both of them, like Jeong Jeong, like I'd really like to know, in terms of like just the kind of history, like does Jeong Jeong know the whole fire dragon, like true meaning of firebending thing? Because it strikes me, at least in the Deserter, that he really doesn't, just because of the way he talks about it. Like it almost seems like Jeong Jeong himself is afraid of firebending, and so when he's teaching Aang, that comes across so heavily to Aang that Jeong Jeong is really holding back with regards to teaching him anything, and is going super slow in the training. And so you sort of understand that maybe he had this approach with Zhao, and Zhao did roughly the same thing, and so that's why he's like that. But either way, he was the type of teacher that Aang in the end didn't need. He didn't need someone who was afraid of firebending to be his teacher and was kind of holding back from teaching him anything. In the end, what Aang needed was someone like Zuko, who was aware of how dangerous firebending could be, but understood the need for the power, need for the technique, and ultimately Zuko himself isn't afraid to use his technique. Is just aware of the potential that it has to be dangerous. Whereas, like, you look at like Jeong Jeong's lines from the Deserter primarily, and he is really like hitting home that like fire's dangerous, you know, like it's a curse and all this stuff. Just let's listen to this line. He's like, before learning firebending, you must learn water and earth. Water is cool and soothing, earth is steady and stable, but fire is alive. It breathes, it grows. Without a bender, a rock will not throw itself. The fire will spread and destroy everything in its path. If one does not have the will to control it, that is destiny. You are not ready, you are too weak. And then even at this point in time, Avatar Roku appears kind of through Aang to basically ask Jeong Jeong to like teach him, like, the Avatar's weak. No. So clearly, like, Roku even thinks that like Jeong Jeong has to some extent the wrong philosophy on firebending and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. And then later on, you know, he's always talking about learn restraint or risk destroying everything, yourself and everything you love, and he's hinting at the way that Zhao has ultimately become, that he just shoots his fire and has no idea about where he's actually shot it, which is the whole point of the fight later on, where Aang, without even attacking Jeong Jeong, has done anything. Aang, without even attacking Zhao, has basically beaten Zhao because Zhao's own firebending has destroyed his own boat and stuff like that. And then when Qatar's burnt and like Jeong Jeong's just like I'm not going to teach you anymore and stuff like that, he's just kind of like sees this as like oh look, it's my fault, and like I didn't teach him properly, and in a way it's true in that Aang doesn't want Jeong Jeong as his teacher because the style of teaching just did not suit Aang at all. And then what he says to Katara is really interesting. You have healing abilities. The great benders of the water tribe sometimes have this ability. I always wished I were blessed like you, free from this burning curse. So he sees the fact that he's a firebender as a curse. The fact that he's a master firebender is this cursed thing that he has. He says, water brings healing and life, but fire brings only destruction and pain. It forces those of us burdened with its care to walk a razor's edge between humanity and savagery. Eventually we are torn apart. Why did this guy ever develop his technique of firebending if this is his philosophy on it? There's a real big sense here that part of the reason he sees this is because he's seen the way Zhao has gone with firebending. He sees the way Ozai has gone with firebending and the line of fire lords, and just in general sees the overall way that most of the Fire Nation sees the technique as like for power, to gain control, to kind of take over the entire world, and just that's all he can see in it. So clearly, like, if he had learned even from Iroh like what the true meaning of firebending is, that it's it's life, and it's the positive sides to it. It brings warmth, light and stuff like that. It's the most kind of, I suppose, living of the elemental arts. He clearly doesn't have that, or at least has sort of to some extent forgotten it. It's interesting, for sure. And he mentions the word savage, and then he says it again to Zhao when Zhao actually shows up. And then kind of turns everything around and says that, your title will not help you against the Avatar. Do not try to fight him. You are no match for the Avatar. And he's never seen such raw power. It's interesting, just his approach to teaching and how it's completely changed. And it's one of those things where if there was more to be told about Jeong Jeong in a comic or something like that, I would definitely like to get the backstory of Jeong Jeong teaching Zhao. Find out what the relationship was between those two, where Jeong Jeong actually first started teaching Zhao. I suppose who Jeong Jeong was before firebending became a curse to him. Like, what changed it for him? Was it Zhao? What did Zhao actually do in their training that really promoted this big shift? Did he come into contact with Ozai at some point, and then Ozai saw something in him, which is why Zhao was so eager to kind of prove himself to Ozai? There's a lot of really interesting things kind of going on here for sure that I really like to know. It's one of those things where I don't know how much there is, like, I suppose, post ATLA the series in terms of like present day, where we are in the comics right now, how much story there is to tell with like present day Jeong Jeong beyond some sort of like Iroh, Zuko, Aang talking to him and trying to help him realize what firebending actually is, and like have a different perspective on it. Maybe just the Order of White Lotus reuniting and him being around the likes of Pian Dao, Iroh, helped him to see what it really means, and the fact that Aang ended up saving the world and the Fire Nation is now in better hands going forward has in general made him see things differently. Like, that's what I want to know. I want to know, has Jeong Jeong's philosophy changed since the Deserter primarily? He seems a little bit kind of happier when we see him in the ATLA finale, but he's probably like the least focused upon member of the Order of the White Lotus, because he had the least impact on our ATLA crew going forward. The only real impact he had was the way he thought Aang basically led to Aang becoming afraid of the technique. In that he's just like, okay, basically the way like Jeong Jeong thought Aang was like, okay, we're not going to do firebending for like 2 years. Here's how dangerous it is. It's really dangerous. This is why exactly you can't do this. Rather than kind of just introducing him to it like slowly and be just like, okay, look, it's dangerous. We're going to use fire straight from the start, but you have to take it slow. And that's the whole thing. He didn't realize the pupil that he actually had. But again, the way you train Aang is probably a overly changed form of teaching from the way he thought Zhao. Maybe he thought Zhao in a really effective way, but Zhao turned out that way, and he didn't want that to happen with Aang, and so that's why he was so aggressive with the whole firebending's a curse and stuff like that. But he's an interesting character for sure. He's seen as a legend, in the whole episode. They set it up before they meet him that's the case. And like overall, it's really interesting, I suppose, what they end up doing with him, and that he is a member of the Order of White Lotus. So to some extent, he has a complete world philosophy on things. But again, I think backstory is really important. I'd like to know how Jeong Jeong came to join the White Lotus, what his full story is with regards to, like his involvement in the Fire Nation military, and what exactly happened with that and stuff like that. So yeah, like it's I suppose that's roughly about all there is to say. I think with Jeong Jeong, it's mainly his past that's probably the important thing. Like, I could definitely see them doing some sort of story where like Aang goes up to Jeong Jeong and asks, what actually happened between you and Zhao? Like, what was the full story? And then we see that full flashback. And then Jeong Jeong maybe comes out of the flashback and says, you know, like, and that's why I feel this way about firebending. And then Zuko kind of comes in, and he and Aang kind of explained to Jeong how they felt similarly themselves about firebending, with the whole Zuko burning Toph's feet, how Aang really felt about burning Katara in the deserter, and how meaning with like the dragons and some of their speaking with Iroh helped him to really see firebending in a completely different light and truly understand what it is, and maybe they teach him something. I think that would be a really cool sort of story to tell, and I don't think it would take too long. You'd basically just finish and round out Jeong Jeong's arc as a character fully doing it that way. But really that's all there is to say. You know, maybe there's some setup to how like Che has become somewhat of Jeong Jeong's like disciple in a way, where he's seen as like a legend among the people of the nearby village and stuff like that. But that's really all there is to say about Jeong Jeong. Anything else I'm going to say would be me repeating myself, and I've probably already done that a bunch. So yeah, that has been the discussion video on Jeong Jeong. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on him as a character, what I've said, and potential stories in the future you'd like to see with him. Definitely like his friendship with Iroh, what's that like, who's he closest to in the White Lotus, are some cool things I'd like to see. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.